Good morning, everybody. This is Chester ARP Church Devotional Podcast. Clint Davis, your host. Thanks so much for joining us. Genesis 16, Hagar and Ishmael, and the story of Abram and Hagar coming up.
Gives me grace for every trial. Feeds me with the living bread.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us here this morning at the Chester ARP Church Devotional Podcast. As we get started, we read Genesis chapter 16, beginning in verse 1. Now, Abram's wife, Sarai, had not borne any children for him, but she owned an Egyptian slave woman named Hagar. Sarai said to Abram, "Since the Lord has prevented me from bearing children, go to my sister. Perhaps through her I can build a family." And Abram agreed to what Sarai had said. So Abram's wife, Sarai, took Hagar, her Egyptian slave, and gave her to her husband Abram as a wife for him. This happened after Abram lived in the land of Canaan 10 years. He slept with Hagar, and she became pregnant. And when she saw that she was pregnant, her mistress became contemptible to her. Then Sarai said to Abram, "You are responsible for my suffering. You are responsible for my suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and when you saw that she was pregnant, I became contemptible to her. May the Lord judge between me and you." Now Abram replied to Sarai, "Here, your slave is in your hands. Do whatever you want with her." Then Sarai mistreated her so much that she ran away from her. Let's stop there this morning. These verses 1 through 6 here in this story. It's a familiar story to us. It's Abraham and Sarah having a conversation about the offspring through whom the Lord will bless the world. You remember God makes a covenant with Abram. That's chapter 15. We saw that 2 days ago. And now we move into chapter 16 where God says, "I'm going to give you an offspring." And God is intended to give it to him through Sarai, his wife. However, Abram and Sarai come up with this idea and this plan that she is going to give her slave, Hagar, the Egyptian slave Hagar, to Abram, and she is going to, in essence, Hagar is going to be a surrogate mother for the child that the Lord will bear, or that the Lord will bring into this world, and she will bear the son, the offspring, through whom God will bless the world. Now, God has already told them that Sarai herself will give a birth, and that it will be an offspring through his wife, but Abram does not agree with that. He does not believe that, and so he and Sarah take the time to make up their own plan to try to fix this problem. The problem is she cannot conceive. She's barren. They have most likely tried to conceive multiple times and never were successful, and so as a result of that, she's frustrated. She's down and out, and she concocts a plan. He goes along with it to try to figure out a way in which they're going to bring about the promise that God has given to them. They're going to take matters into their own hands. Let me just tell you, that's never a good idea. When God says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. We've got to learn to trust him to do what he has promised to do. God has said, "I'm going to give you an offspring through your wife Sarai, or Sarah." And he chooses to ignore that and thinks that he can come up with another plan, that this in essence will be through Sarai or through Sarah by going in to have a relationship with his wife's handmaid or his wife's servant, Hagar. She becomes Abram's wife, and of course we know what happens. Once she conceives a child, she has the leg up over her mistress, or over her master Sarah, and so Hagar becomes contemptible. She has a reason to attack her rival. She has a reason to elevate herself over Sarah, and so after having been a servant or a slave for years, potentially, now she's got the upper hand. And of course, she's going to take advantage of this opportunity, and she does. And so she rubs Sarah's face into this situation. She just continues to bring it up, and she continues to flaunt it around, and she becomes contemptible to Sarah, and Sarah is very much irritated with Hagar. Now, we're told specifically that Sarah is the one who hardens her heart toward Hagar, and so Hagar's response will probably be one of flaunting and of pride, but at the same time, Sarah's hardens her heart toward Hagar. This is Sarah's plan, but she hardens her heart because she doesn't get the desire of her heart. They tried to come up with their own plan. They tried to do it their own way, and when their plan was, quote, successful, it was not good for them. And that's a lesson. It's never good to try to come up with our own way. It's never good to do it our own terms. Secondly, oftentimes when we do it our way, even though we're, quote, successful in doing it, we are not happy with the results. We are frustrated. We're irritated. We're annoyed. It's never a good thing. And so let's keep that in mind as we think about, as we are called to follow the Lord, to fulfill the promises that He's given us. We're called to bring glory to His name. We need to do it according to His will and according to His purposes and His plans. When we take matters into our own hands is when we get in trouble. That's what Adam and Eve did, and you notice here that Sarah takes matters into her own hand. Abraham goes along with it. He's passive in going along with it, and then he's passive in the result. So he says, you do what you want to with her. And so she was so mean to Hagar. Hagar fled from her presence, and Abram didn't step in, though that was his own child, his own flesh and blood. Her offspring would be Ishmael, would be his son. He didn't step in because he's passive. So, men, we've got to learn to not be passive. We've got to learn to stand firm on the Word of God, and all of us have to learn to try not to make things our own way, but rather to trust the Lord as we follow Him. You guys have a great day. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow.
You carry me close to your heart, and surely your goodness and mercy will follow.